Well, Arie, we're at your house here in Homosassa, Florida today, and we're on a road trip for the Wolfhounds to try to go around and find and see as many guys as we can. And you know, you and I have always talked about how important it was to actually document the history of our unit and the guys that were in it, and pretty much kind of tell our story, tell the story of the unit and so forth. And so I came up with the idea that I would actually try to physically go see every guy that I could that was in our unit and get his story, his story, his Vietnam story. And so, Arie, tell us in your own words your whole story. Go ahead.
Well, it first started in 1967. I was eligible for the draft, but then I was going to have to work, so I called the draft board and says, when am I going to be drafted? And they says, probably June of '67. I says, well, can I just volunteer for the draft and go earlier? I figured, because why start a job and then you know, have to quit, go into service. So I went ahead and I did that, and I went to Fort Campbell, Kentucky for basic training for 8 weeks. And then during basic training, of course, we get our letter telling us what we're going to do, and I was assigned to be a cook out of 94 B10, I think was my MOS. And so I didn't know what it was at the time. I asked the guy, and I said, oh gosh, I really don't want to be a cook. I'd rather almost been anything, because I wasn't really that fond of cooking. But that's what the Army, that's where they wanted me, so I guess it's what I was. So there I went for 8 weeks. I went to Fort Lee, Virginia, to a quartermaster's school in Fort Lee.
Did you take basic first?
I took basic at Fort Campbell, Kentucky.
Oh, that you said that.
Weeks,
oh,
yes.
I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that's right. So then I went, like I said, quartermaster's school in Fort Lee, Virginia for 8 weeks. And they taught you how to tear apart the burners and different things that you would need out in the field, because they said you're probably going to go to Vietnam and we want to teach you everything about the field that we can. So we did a lot of that. Then we had, I think, 5 weeks of that type of training, and then they went weapons training, because they figured just because you're going to be a cook, you're not going to be out of danger. So we went for 3 weeks of weapons training, and after that I graduated from there, and then they sent me to, of all places, Munster, Indiana, to a missile site. And there I worked in the mess hall in the missile site for 7 months. And then they said, Arie, we got some bad news for you. Your orders came down and you're going to Vietnam. So, you know, I wasn't too crazy about it, but yet I was kind of excited, because my dad was in the military, my uncles were in the military, all World War II, and I felt that that's what I should do. So I wasn't really too upset about going to Vietnam. Of course, I figured being a cook would be a little bit easier too than, you know, going into a combat situation. But I didn't realize once I got to Vietnam, you were in a combat situation, regardless. So I went over to Vietnam, and I landed in Bien Hoa, and at that time Bien Hoa was under attack. So the pilot came on and says, soldiers, we're not going to be landing at Bien Hoa, we have to go to Tan Son Nhut. So we landed, he diverted, went to Tan Son Nhut, and we got on the buses going to the 90th Replacement Battalion in Long Binh. And as we were going into Saigon, it was during Tet, just before Tet started, and the kids were throwing M80s and stuff at the buses that we were in, and we thought we were getting shot at and stuff. I mean, that was the most scariest moment that I can remember at that time, because we were still in our khaki uniforms, nice clean khakis. And then the second night we were in Long Binh waiting for orders, which company we're going to go to and so forth. And Spooky was outside the gate. They were trying to overrun Long Binh. And that was the scariest sound I have ever heard in my life. It was just, you can't explain it until you hear Spooky, what it does to you. So they told us to get underneath our bunks, and then they had bullets flying through the barracks that we were at, because if you see, we're outside the wire. So they says, don't worry about it, just get underneath the bunks. So we all did that, we jumped under our bunks and we put the mattresses over us. So that was an experience. So then the next day, they picked like, they told you Hill, Dobish, blah, 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 come in and get your orders. So then they said that I was gonna be with headquarters company, the 25th Infantry Division. So I says, oh, okay, and then some guy that I was standing with says, that's the Wolfhounds, you don't wanna go there. And I says, at that time I never heard of the Wolfhounds, but he says, you don't wanna go to the Wolfhounds. So I says, oh, okay, so anyway, they put me on a bus, and they drove us the next day from Long Binh to Cu-Chi. And they sent me to headquarters company, which I met George Cawthorn, and he was a company clerk. That's the first person they sent me to. And he says, well, Arie, he says, we're gonna send you to Charlie Company. It's one of our field companies, which is not gonna be the best duty, but it's a good company to go to. So I did go to Charlie Company, and that's where I stayed the whole time I was there.
Who did you meet first when you went to Charlie Company? The very first day when you walked in?
Sergeant Coker, but I forgot his first name. Sergeant Coker.
Was he the company clerk, or was
he was
first sergeant, or
the first sergeant, and then they sent me right to the mess hall at that time. So that was pretty interesting.
And this was on a company level? In other words, this was Charlie Company.
Correct.
And where was the mess hall located?
Okay, all the billets were, I can't remember where it was at, but it was right there next to the billets, because we used to have a sidewalk that went from the mess hall right to Charlie Company's barracks
area. Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Yeah, in other words, it's almost, the mess hall was almost right in the middle of the company area.
Okay.
And then we stayed there until April. In April they said, well, they're closing up Cu-Chi. They were all gonna go out to the field. And that's when we went out, our first field, they took everybody out to the field. And we went to Tan Son Nhut, where the big 3 radar domes were at Tan Son Nhut. I don't think, you weren't there, Larry was there.
I never got there.
Yeah, Larry was there, but they took us.
That offensive.
Yeah, to Tan Son Nhut, so we went to Tan Son Nhut, and that was the first base camp. We were there maybe 6 weeks. We went there, and we would bring the food out to the field. A lot of the fellas didn't like going out to the field, but I did. I don't know why. Something just drew me to tell me to go out and be there with the guys that were fighting, doing the fighting. And
Do you remember where the guys were at that time? Were they around Tain Inn, or what? Where were you actually going? Were they on a fire support base, or?
no, at Tan Son Nhut everybody was based at
Okay,
Tan Son Nhut at the
okay.
time, and we used to go out on the ambush patrols and stuff from there. And that's when we would go. And then from there we went to September, I know we were at Crockett, went to Trang Bang, and that was pretty hairy. That was kind of the worst, I think, that I saw.
So when you were at Tan Son, what was it, Tan Son Nhut? What rank were you at that? What were you?
I was an E3 when I first
So you
came
went
in country.
into Vietnam as an E3?
E3,
Okay.
correct.
So how did you progress what was the circumstances for you to progress in rank?
E4, well, I felt that I worked hard, and I didn't mind what I was doing. I liked what I was doing at the time, and I just tried to do the best to my ability, because I knew that two of the men out in the field depended on me. It was a big job, because they didn't get food every day like we did, and so forth. So it was a pretty big deal.
So do I understand correctly that let's say when you were in Cu-Chi, you had to feed all the guys
From all the different companies.
like in in supply and all, so all of those guys showed up in your chow hall, and you were also sending food out to us?
Yes.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah.
That's a lot of food.
Yeah, we had everybody that was stationed back in Charlie Company, anybody that was left behind, the clerks
Yeah.
and so forth.
that worked in the company,
company area.
Hooch or whatever, and
But then when we went out to the field, of course, the mess hall and everybody went out to the field then.
I
There was
remember
nobody
at
outside.
Crockett, as a matter of
Yeah,
fact.
I turned 21 at Crockett.
And then you were at Jackson, I think, and Reed, didn't you?
Reed,
Yeah,
I was at
I
Reed.
remember that very, very well. So, and you guys, as I recall, you always had your mess tent and your area, and then they had the serving lines outside and so forth. How many cooks did you usually take with you or have out in the field?
Out in the field, there was mainly maybe 7 plus the mess sergeant.
And you were you a cook when you
I was
were
a
like an E4?
Cook as an E4, and then I was promoted to E5.
And
right after
when
that.
you were E5, was that when you were the mess
The
sergeant then?
first cook, they called it.
Okay,
Mess sergeant's like an E6.
yep. And you and I have talked before, a lot of times you had guys coming out of the field and they would send them to you.
Right. A lot of guys that were either wounded, or we had one guy that was pretty messed up, you know, from the trauma, and then they would have him come and be a cook, but then he wouldn't go back out in the field, like with the helicopters, because we used to have to bring chow out to the field all the time. You know, I mean, not a lot, like, we'd send out the sea rations and so forth, but we would have hot meals out in the field, like at Crockett, and that was definitely out in the field. And Trangbang was out in the field. I don't even think we had mess tents in those areas.
Well, I remember one time we were up on the Cambodian border and they were sending us out on 7-day, they call them 7-day riffs. And basically you packed sea rations and then you'd have a resupply helicopter come in like every other day and they'd drop off mail and more seeds. But during that 7 days, one of those days, you'd show up.
Yes.
And they'd have the Mermite cans and so forth, and it was like a real fast, you unloaded it. I mean, because we were right there on the border, you know, and I mean, we were out in the middle of nowhere. Do you remember that? Do you remember those days where you guys would bring all of it out, set it all up, everybody got fed, and then you guys had to clean everything up and get out of there? Do you remember those?
I just remember the one night in Tain Inn where we brought out the food, and then the helicopters, of course, they leave, and they're supposed to come back and get you, but that night they didn't come back to get us. And that's the night that we were under fire, and I have a newspaper clipping about it, and that we killed 56 trying to cross our line that night. I mean, they had the cooks out there shooting, they had anybody out there that would do it.
Sure, fighting for your life.
Yeah, because, you know, if you get overrun,
You're done.
you're done.
You know, that's another thing a lot of guys don't realize. You guys had weapons.
Yeah, every day.
And I personally remember at Diamond on February 23rd, you know, when that fire support base got overrun, the cooks actually set up a hell of a defensive line, and you know, you don't think of cooks being what do I want to say, like combat soldiers,
Yeah.
but they distinguished themselves with great honor that night, and I mean, I can't imagine what it must have looked like with all these cooks out there on a defense line, keeping the NVA from coming through the wire. But that's what happened that night. And I actually talked to a cook after that, and he said, you know what, we were fighting for our lives.
Yes.
He goes, like you just said, Arie, there wasn't any option. You know, nobody even looked at each other and say, well, should we just stay in the mess area? They knew instinctively, that this was probably the night.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you know, like you said, when you got to Vietnam, you were in a combat zone.
Yes.
It wasn't AIT anymore, and it wasn't, you know, quartermaster school. The reality really, you know, the reality hit you the first day you were there.
Yeah.
We're not landing here because they're under assault.
We were landed at Benoit and couldn't land. It just kind of shook you to the bone because you expected to land, get off at the airport, and walk like you do at O'Hare or something, you know.
It was a shock.
What were holidays like for you? What did you guys as cooks try to cook the guys and the troops like special meals or
Yeah.
what can you tell us what that was like?
Yes, they would have a menu for every day of the year. Your days were planned out, every day, 365 days a year. They had like a big cookbook, an atlas type of thing, and Thanksgivings, you would have your normal turkey, your dressing, your salads, your cranberry stuff, and they would.
Shrimp?
We would bring it, no shrimp, I don't think we ever had shrimp. But they would actually bring out everything that you would eat like you did at home, and everything was fresh, to the contrary of what others may believe.
Did you ever get fresh hamburger?
Yes, we did.
And
When we were
would
in-
that be like spaghetti
When
sauce?
we were
or-
in Cucci, we got regular fresh meat.
You did, okay.
But out in the field, you
Yeah,
can't get fresh meat.
it was all in cases.
What did you ever have any guys or folks out there that had special needs, like they were allergic to this or that, or you had to prepare special food for certain people, or
No.
did everybody?
No, never had nothing like that. Everybody just was glad to get what they had to eat, so that was the biggest thing.
How was actually getting food to you? How were you getting how were you requisitioning what you needed? Was that an automatic and it just showed up
No.
on your doorstep?
No,
or how
you'd have a thing like this, and you would check off so many pounds of hamburger, so many cans of baked beans.
So that was your
And
that was
a
your
That
job?
was my job, and it was a requisition.
Okay. And then who would fill that? What
We would give
mechanism?
it to the quartermaster and headquarters company.
In
and then-
Cucci?
In Cucci, and then they would ship it out.
So was there a huge warehouse full of
Yes.
cases like?
Connex,
Okay.
train
Yeah.
cars, or
Yeah,
whatever they
yeah.
call them.
Yeah.
The Connex
Okay.
boxes were
Yeah.
full.
And fresh just came in,
Fresh oranges, crates of oranges,
and they probably
Absolutely.
came in through aircraft or
probably.
yeah,
I would
something like
imagine.
that.
Did the soldiers have a favorite meal that you guys prepared? Did they have anything that was a favorite that they loved?
No, I think spaghetti was easiest and the best to cook, really. But like I said, we had to go by whatever they said we had to cook that day. You just couldn't give them biscuits and gravy because it may call for real good fresh eggs.
What Arie was referring to there was SOS. I don't believe we called it biscuits and gravy.
It
Do
wasn't too bad.
you remember SOS?
Oh, yes, I remember.
Oh, okay. I
SOS.
just thought maybe I was going to have to refresh your memory.
It was more like biscuits and gravy, I think, though. I mean, it was real sausage.
Yeah, yeah.
It was real sausage.
Did the guys, did they ever hate any, was there anything that you served that they just loathed or they hated
Nobody,
eating?
I cannot remember one complaint about
Liver.
liver. Well, we did have that too cooked, but some guys like liver, so, for you.
Yep.
Did you guys ever hold back supplies and try to do like cookies or a cake or anything like that for guys, did you ever try to do extra or fun?
Oh, yes, we used to make cakes almost quite often, the sheet cakes mainly, because they were easier, you could feed more people that way.
So refresh my memory. We're at Crockett and breakfast was being served. And you had your line. You had the immersion heater at the end, maybe 2.
3.
Okay. Yeah, and
You're right.
and just from experience, we were starving to death all the time. That's just the way it was. Everybody was hungry, right?
Yeah.
All the time. And when there was something really cool, and you're sitting there salivating, and the guy would just take one little ladle of peaches and put on your plate, and you'd look at him. I've done this, and I would beseechingly, I would almost get tears in my eyes. And they would, you know what they'd say? Move.
Move on.
Move out.
Move out.
Well, don't forget, everything was proportioned.
You know,
so you had to-
I know.
you had to
Because if
get
you'd have
one.
given everybody extra, then somebody at the end wouldn't
That's
have
right.
got it.
Except if you really like the guys, you would throw on an extra piece.
Just a peach.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little slice of peach or whatever.
That's why I never got an extra peach.
In your time in Vietnam, was there was there a night or an event that changed your life forever that you'll never forget?
Yes, Larry and I were in Trang Bang. And the little kids used to come by with bread and soda pop, and they'd try to sell it to you for a couple of
NPCs.
NPCs or something, you know. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden, this VC, I guess he got there somehow, came in, threw a hand grenade, blew off the little kid's legs. And the little kid's sitting there like this. Me and Larry are there, and Henry Baker and Stu. And he's like this, and his skin's just hanging the meat's just hanging from his legs. And he goes, "Help me, GIs, help me, GIs." And that's stuck with me. That's the worst. You know, to see a little kid, you can understand a soldier or something get wounded, but not a little kid. But then the guy did run down. We were at Trang Bang, so he ran down the river. And like a bunch of guys turned around and they killed him then. And then the other one was where I fell off the back of a deuce and a half. We were on, I don't know if I can remember the name of that highway out of Cu-Chi. Highway 1.
Yep.
And we hit a crater, bomb crater or something, and I fell out of the back of the deuce and a half and hurt my back pretty bad, and that's what I'm getting some of my compensation for. I finally got it after 49 years. See that, and there's a lot of different things, coming back with the dead bodies on the Hueys. When we'd have to come back, we'd come back at night with our stuff, and then they'd send the bodies back on the Hueys with us. But the ones that the dust-offs couldn't get away with. So that was pretty, so nobody's immune to a war zone.
Well, those are things that stay with you forever. You never get the smell and the sight, and to this day I can still smell.
I can too.
You know.
But I knew a lot of great men over there. Ronnie Blair was killed on Mother's Day. He was from Ohio, and he was a real good friend too. He was 11 Bravo.
What was your greatest life lesson you brought home from Vietnam? You brought it home, and now you can look back all these years. You said almost 49 years. What happened in Vietnam that makes you the man you are today?
I think seeing the carnage that happened and meeting good friends, keeping the friendship like Larry and Stu and you guys, that's the biggest thing. And to have a family that was supportive. Nancy was waiting for me there at O'Hare when I come home, and she stood by me all these years. So that helps. That helps when you got somebody you know that loves you. Because when we were in San Francisco, or Oakland it was on the way home, they told us not to wear our uniforms home. That was really kind of pretty bad to say that to a soldier that just got done serving his country. But we wore them home anyway.
Did you get any, when you came home and you were in the airports, did you get any snide remarks or anybody saying things to you? Or?
No, I don't think so, no. Because I was with my mom and dad and Nancy.
Yeah. One of the downsides of living in California is when we came home, we went to, what was it, Tonsanute? Is that where we flew into? Oakland? What was the?
Travis.
Oh, Travis, yeah, Travis. And that was one of the biggest organized anti-war protesters. Jane Fonda had her group down there, and she had half of them there and half of them up at Fort Ord, California. And that's where I did my basic and AIT. And they were outside that gate every single day, and any soldier coming in or out, they would curse and throw stuff at them and spit at them. And that had an effect. Like you said, when I came home and they told me, do not wear your uniform off of this base, put your civilian clothes on.
Yeah.
Nobody understood. No, why? Why would I do that? And then we found out, because when we did leave, they were there. And they were hostile, real hostile.
Yeah.
And so then, like most of us, we got confused. Why is this? I just got through serving my country. Why isn't somebody there saying hello or welcome and like most of us, Arie, after that, we didn't tell people much. We didn't mention too much about our service to people.
Yeah, I never mentioned a thing about it until Joe Oscom found me on Facebook and invited me to the reunion. That was the first time I ever talked about it, and it was about 40 years.
Your great-grandkids one day, maybe even great-great-great-grandkids are gonna watch this, and they're gonna see you, and even your children and friends. What would you say, if you could say anything to people about your Vietnam experience or about your life, what would you share with them?
To be proud of who you are, be proud to serve the United States of America. It's still, regardless of what the problems we have, still the greatest country in the world.
When did you get in country?
January 21st, 1968. 68.
68. And when did you get out?
January 21st,
So, yeah.
1969.
And you were an E3 when you got there,
Correct.
and an E5 when you got out.
Yes.
What else don't I know about you when you got back from Vietnam? What did you do with your life?
I came home and my dad owned a plumbing company, so I went to work for them. And then after a few months, I was so restless, I just couldn't, I felt like I was being confined. And I guess maybe the war did that. Then I went and worked for Eastern Airlines for 7 years. And then after that, after the 7 years, then I decided, my dad then wanted me to come back and work for them, so I went back and became a plumber, and then I was a plumber until 2010 when I retired.
How many years would that have been?
Total 20-some years.
You fit a lot of pipes in those years.
Yes, I have. Yes, I have. A lot of hard work.
And you retired and you were in Chicago.
Yes, we lived in
You
Chicago.
lived in Chicago, and then you, as I recall, you decided
to move to Florida here.
that what is it, Arie, that I haven't asked, that you've always kind of held in your heart, that something really, really personal and something about your Vietnam experience that you'd like to share?
Well, I'm glad I served with Charlie Company. I'm really proud to be a member of Charlie Company. I met some lifelong friends. Larry's sitting right here, John's sitting right here. I met John's son, which was a pretty good experience. I've had my wife for 49 years, which is a great honor. I got great family, great mother-in-law. I mean, the guy couldn't really ask for much more, you know. Just being in Vietnam was such a experience. It's just something that you'll never forget, and you live day by day with good memories and bad memories.
And you know what's amazing to me? I look at you and I see a Vietnam vet that came home, could have went either way. Somehow or another, whatever you had inside of you, you took a positive direction in your life. A lot of us didn't. A lot of guys came home and their life was ruined from the time they got home until they either died or they're still messed up. And yet you were able somehow to positively put one step in front of the other, and you worked so hard. And like you said, you've got such a wonderful family. And I think that's a testament to who the man you really are.
Thank you.
And I just respect you so much, Arie.
Thank you.
I respect you so much. That and you know, you've supported us in every single way. that there is to do it, and I can't thank you enough for that.
Thank you. I give my credit to my wife. I gotta admit, I've been through a lot. She's took me through a lot, and I love her for it.
Arie, I'm so glad to be here with you, buddy. Thank you
Glad
for,
you're here.
and thank you for having us in your home
Thank you.
and allowing us to realize our dream, and now it's your dream.
Thank you.
So, you and I'll get this done.
Great, thank you.
Thanks.